Hi, my name is Emily Shilton. I'm here to talk to you about the co-op experience at the University of Waterloo. So a little bit of background about me before I start. I'm originally from Hamilton, Ontario. My program is mechatronics engineering, and I also declared a minor in English literature to help kind of balance out my degree a little. I've been involved in a lot of extracurriculars at the University of Waterloo. Some of my favorites have been, I got to compete on the varsity field hockey team. I was part of the autonomous student design team, which was working to build an autonomous car. I was the director of Waterloo's Women in Engineering program for a term. And one of my favorites was probably being an orientation leader for the engineering orientation in the fall. I've done that every year, and it's been one of probably my favorite things to do. Today, specifically, I'm here to talk to you about co-op at the University of Waterloo. So Waterloo Engineering requires students to complete co-ops throughout their time here. And the schedule with which you complete your co-ops versus your work term really depends on your program, and within your program there's different streams. So on the right slide, I've shown an example of some of the streams that are available. So you can see you might either start with one study term, or you might start with 2 study terms and then jump into your co-op. And then also, depending on your stream, you could even have 2 of your co-ops back to back, in which case you would have 1 8-month co-op. You could either choose to do those at the same company, and I did that for one of mine, and I really liked it because I was jump into one of my projects a little bit deep and kind of get to sort of stay at the company longer and learn a bit more. But I know some people like to sort of split those up and do sort of 6 different companies just because they want to try and work at as many companies as possible, and both of those are really great options. I think the most common questions that I get asked about co-op by high school or first year students is just kind of like, how do I get a job? And I kind of came in with the same worries because, I didn't really know anyone who was an engineer, and I didn't really have any connections to industry. But thankfully, Waterloo is really great about connecting students with the right jobs that they're able to get for different experience levels that they have. So I think the best available resource that Waterloo has is Waterloo Works. And it's an online job portal specific for University of Waterloo students, where the University of Waterloo reaches out to companies and says, we have all these amazing co-op students, and they post jobs in this internal job portal. And then the university facilitates all of the interviews. They come to campus, and you're able to meet with them directly, or if the company is sort of outside of Canada, you can call at one of the rooms available that Waterloo provides. There's hundreds and hundreds of jobs in Waterloo Works, so there's definitely one for you and whatever experience level you have. But you're also able to organize your own job outside of Waterloo Works if you do sort of have a specific company that you're interested in working at. Beyond that, they also have tons of resources to sort of help you get prepared if you're feeling a little bit behind. So they have resume critiques, they have practice interviews, there's meetings with upper year students that we organize to make sure that for your specific program, you can receive mentorship from students who kind of know what types of jobs you're applying for and what your resume is going to look like. So even if it seems like you're not really sure what you're doing, by the time it comes to apply to jobs, you'll know what you need to do, and you'll be prepared to kind of be able to get the co-op jobs that you're interested in. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience at the University of Waterloo and the co-ops I've had. So I'm in mechatronics, so the jobs that I'm going to talk about are kind of specific for mechatronics engineers, but the experiences are similar across all programs. So I had 5 different co-ops, and I'm just going to talk about 3 from kind of different industries that I worked in. So for my second co-op, I worked in research and kind of academia. I went to the National University of Singapore, where I worked as a research assistant. This was pretty mind-blowing for me because I remember I was like 18 and I was able to sort of like move across the world to go work as an engineer sort of in Asia. And I remember just being sort of awed by that experience. So while I was there, it was, yes, I did work, but I think probably the highlights were just kind of getting to explore. Singapore is really beautiful. I also got to travel a bit outside. They gave me time off work because they recognized it was really exciting for me to go see different places. But technically, I also got to work with the university in developing their new kind of like robotics educational program for people who are looking to get into, I guess, like technology like later in life, kind of change careers. So it's a bit of an intro with the goal of getting people new jobs. So I guess that center photo is me with sort of one of the robots I was working with. We were kind of doing in-class lab, so I had to kind of get the robot running and then help the students figure out how to do it. The top right was actually, I ended up winning a hackathon while I was there, and I got to participate in Emerging Tech Asia conference. So I met sort of all of these sort of leaders in robotics in Asia. So I don't know, it was pretty mind-blowing to me. It was really awesome. My second co-op experience, my third co-op experience, I worked at a startup. This was really awesome. I got to stay in the city of Waterloo. And at the time I was on a student design team. So that was great because I was able to continue my work on the student design team, as well as sort of get a really awesome co-op job. So I was working at a company called Ad Hoc Microsystems as a mechatronics engineer. And it was a really cool company. It was started by some nanotechnology PhD graduates, and they were building this very tiny microelectronics device that would sit inside sort of glasses or VR goggles, and then it would be used for eye tracking. I really loved the startup experience. It was very relaxed, it was very casual, and it was incredibly hands-on. I feel like I probably learned the most working at a startup because, you know, everything had to be very go, go, go. You had to be able to jump from project to project. And I also really loved working in the city of Waterloo. That center photo, I was able to join the sailing team for the term, and I got to go compete at a regatta. I didn't really know how to sail, but it was a really fun learning experience. And the photo on the right, I was just trying to show some of the fun things we got to do at our startup. I don't have a ton of photos, but my favorite was that they bought all of the co-op students Hawk slippers because their company name was Ad Hoc. And we just got to wear those around the office every day. And I don't know, it was just a really fun time, and I really loved it. For my fifth and sixth co-op, I decided to move from a smaller company to a bigger company just to kind of understand how the differences would be. So I worked for 8 months at Apple at their headquarters in Cupertino, California. I was working as a hardware reliability engineer, which basically means I looked at the little PCBs, like the small electronic devices, and tried to understand how users use them and how they were going to degrade over time with wear. And while I was there, I got to work on the Apple Watch Series 5, which came out in fall of 2019. So that was really satisfying to spend all this time working on this project and then get to see people wearing it. And I got to go to the store and see people sort of like buying it. So it was really, really satisfying to be able to build something that people were going to use and people were going to love. I really loved living in California. It was different from Waterloo for sure. It was a lot warmer. And I got to go outside. I think the bottom right photo, I was in Yosemite for a weekend. And then just working at Apple, there was lots of really awesome experiences that allowed me to happen. So I was able to visit their manufacturing facilities in China. So I got to kind of see the end-to-end process of sort of how it gets built to when it's put in a box and shipped out to customers. And that top right photo, we were able to go, there was a Steve Jobs memorial event. So Lady Gaga came to our campus and performed a concert for all of the employees. So it was very cool. It was very large scale. And I'm really glad I was able to kind of have that experience at a larger company. So those are my experiences as a mechatronics engineer in the co-ops I got to have. And I talked to some of my sort of friends in different programs, and I found some sample jobs that they've worked and their job titles. But even for all of these programs, you can have the same, I guess, breadth of experiences. So you can do all of these at small companies, at startups, in academia, and you can sort of be able to explore the full range of opportunities that your program provides you and see what's right for you. So when you graduate, you kind of know, I guess, what industry you're looking to go into. So those are my thoughts on the University of Waterloo Co-op program. Feel free to reach out to me or anyone at the University of Waterloo if you have more questions or want to learn more. Hope to see you on campus soon.
Hey everyone, my name is Sam Legg. I'm a graduate of the nanotechnology engineering program in 2012. Today I kind of wanted to walk you through my journey going into the University of Waterloo during my time at the University of Waterloo in the nanotechnology program, and then what kind of has happened since in my career, and then concluding the conversation with a little bit of a reflection on what I think makes the University of Waterloo special. So a little bit about me. I spent my childhood half growing up in Canada, half growing up in the United States. I actually ended up moving back from the States to go to school at the University of Waterloo. I'm really big into getting outside and outdoors and doing all activities like mountain biking, canoeing, skiing, hiking, backpacking, whatever, as long as when I'm not working or not locked down due to a pandemic, I'm usually outside trying to do one of these activities. And lastly, I'm really big into puns. I know you're probably wondering what. That's something that's relevant about you, but it's a really big passion of mine. I can get into all sorts of conversations around that if you're ever interested in it. So going back to my time, leading up into when I started at Waterloo, and thinking about like what made me make the decision to join Waterloo in 2007. Number one, Waterloo engineers were everywhere at the time. Anywhere that I was looking in terms of like, interesting companies that I cared about, or interesting research projects that I would thought were really relevant or interesting. They were either Waterloo engineers or Waterloo graduates running those, or a large contingent of Waterloo engineers inside of those businesses or projects. Secondly, the co-op program really was something that my dad, who's an alumni of University of Waterloo, spoke very highly of, and he told me about how important it was to his career. But when I looked into it in 2007, and I'm sure it's the case, if not more today, the co-op program was really unmatched in its scale, really in North America and probably in the world. And I thought that was something that I really could take advantage of during my time in engineering. And lastly, specifically related to my interest in nanotechnology and science and engineering, the University of Waterloo had some really ambitious plans in quantum computing and nanotechnology research and education, and they've been manifested in more ways than one. But this is just the building on the right-hand side, which is the Quantum Nano Center, which houses both the nano program as well as a lot of amazing research going on in these spaces. So it was also just like very obvious that this was a school that was right for me when it came to digging my teeth into the this frontier of technology. So thinking about my time at Waterloo, I'm going to just take you through like a timeline of the next couple of years, talk to you about my co-op experiences and some of the career decisions that I made through those experiences. So first year engineering in 2007, I went from the top of my class in high school to probably the middle of the class or bottom of the class in my nanotechnology engineering program, just because of how many smart and talented people there were in that class. And in my first really meaningful co-op experience in 2009, I went down to the University of Utah. They had a new federally funded nano institute that was doing some really interesting specific research on rapid detection of anthrax and other biohazard agents like it. But specifically, a lot of the work was related to rapid detection of anthrax. And in those first 4 months, I really was just learning how to be a research assistant and an engineering research assistant too, right? Not just a science research assistant, but an engineering research assistant in that group. But by the time I was done and back at school, I was already collaborating with the people who I had worked with there on a paper, and ended up being more than just one that went to publication. And I really felt like I'd found an area or a process, which was the research process that I really cared about. So I decided to go back to that same group for 2 more co-ops in 2010. And really this gave me the opportunity to just like get a lot deeper into the research and spend a little bit less time learning about the process and a lot more time doing and executing and analyzing data and helping the research scientists there achieve their research goals and write more papers. And so really enjoyed that experience. And then I came back to school in 2010 after those 2 co-ops and ended up having the fortune of joining the Velocity Incubator, which at the time was basically just a residence on campus where you'd spend 4 months living just like a regular on-campus residence, but you'd be put through a set of programming and resources and mentors related to trying to figure out how to start a business, specifically a tech-focused business. And so ended up also through that process and through probably the most difficult term in my engineering career, time in engineering, co-founding a business with 2 other people. And we spent 4 months and a lot more time after that trying to get this company off the ground in any way we could. And then, even though I was working an engineering student and working on this business in whatever time I had left, I still had to go back and do 2 more co-ops, which for me was awesome because, I had spent my early co-ops at University of Utah and the Nano Institute, and I wanted to get a different sense for a different type of research, and so I ended up joining the McMaster University Cancer Research Center, doing work on understanding the origins of asthma and dust allergies and peanut allergies. And this was 8 months spent there as well. And really, throughout my childhood and leading into my late time in high school and early time in university, I was really dead set on doing my PhD after engineering and really getting into the deep hard science and engineering research. But through this actual last set of co-ops, I started to kind of be a little bit more aware of, because I had the comfort of knowing I was good enough at research and I knew what I was doing enough that I could kind of observe the rest of the process. And I realized that, the people around me who were doing the best work and were going to probably be the ones who made the real impact when it came to doing, hard research, were people who had found an area of science or engineering that they cared, so much so that, nothing else mattered, and nothing else meaning like time with friends, time with family. It was just like 150% all in on this research. And so I realized at the end of that co-op, which was my last co-op, I wish it hadn't been my last co-op, but it happened to be my last co-op, that I don't know if I had found that topic quite yet. For me, that I cared so much about it that I'd be doing, research, 36 hours straight without any sleep kind of thing. So at the end of school, I graduated, and I was lucky enough to have worked on a fourth-year design project that was, specific to nanotechnology and the research that I had been involved in over my course of my co-ops. And we had found this really interesting business opportunity by providing like really low cost diagnostic tools in more consumer ready applications. So the end result was basically something where we were trying to integrate a blood glucose monitor for diabetics into a smartphone case so they could carry both of those things together instead of having two separate devices. And so, me and partners co-founded that business after I closed down the previous business that I'd spoke of, and really went full-time all in on this business. And so, nanotechnology program set me up really interestingly for this. It was a very broad scope in terms of we looked at chemistry, biology, electrical engineering, and several other fields. And this field, getting into the diagnostics field, really was a synthesis of a lot of those different areas, while also kind of combining the learnings and passion that I found in that velocity incubator of starting a own business and really building something from the ground up. So in 2012, we started that, and in the process of 2012-13, we were raising money and capital to fund that company, and hire more engineers and spend more money on research and development and manufacturing. Through a series of mistakes that we made, in 2014, we had to actually close the business down, and that journey came to a close. And there I was 2 years after graduating with no job, debt from the business that we had poured money into, or as much as we had into. And so I took that time to look at, what's next for me in my career. This is very similar period that I was in like the middle phases of my co-op in school. It was like, what am I want to do next? What am I going to be most impactful doing? And what ended up happening is the best fit for me at the time was joining a non-for-profit called Communitech in 2014, which is just based down the street from the University of Waterloo. Communitech is basically the hub and the glue that ties together the startup ecosystem in Kitchener-Waterloo, as well as a large portion of startup activity in Toronto as well and across Canada. And I was lucky enough to be able to work on programming for entrepreneurs and startups, as well as in my limited capacity and the small experience I had working at my previous business, act as an advisor for businesses that needed help getting off the ground. And through this process, I met a lot of people, and saw a lot of really interesting business opportunities and ideas, and some failed, some succeed. And one of those businesses that I thought was super interesting and really kind of started to pique my interest at a level that I was like, okay, this is something that I can really dig my teeth into, was Atomic Labs, which I joined in 2015. And so I think from my time in nanotechnology and kind of like distilling what I really liked about nanotechnology as a core concept is, nanotechnology was on the frontier of science and engineering in so many different ways. And really it gave me a lot of different problem solving tools for, frontier technology. And Atomic Labs was also doing that same thing, but a little bit more on the consumer electronic side of things. So, they were really shooting for the moon when it came to trying to build the first pair of consumer smart glasses. And this was something that was just perfectly aligned with where I was at the time in terms of my career, and also aligned exactly with what I thought would be, the best place for me to make a high amount of impact. So 2015 and now up until today, I spent all those years working on building consumer-ready smart glasses. This is just a marketing image of our first version focals. That is, you can see, are not exactly smart regular glasses, but pretty damn close. And we're super proud of what the reception was when we launched the product from places like TechCrunch, The Verge, Wired, all writing reviews that were for the most part positive about the effort that we had made for Focus V1, and really excited about what we were going to build for our second version. And the story, so to speak, kind of ends with North, which was the new brand for Atomic Labs, being purchased by Google around 9 months ago. So I, with many of our team, joined the Google AR VR team, and we now work out of the Kitchener Google Canada office, and work closely with a lot of teammates down in San Francisco and the Valley. So that's kind of the end of my career as it is to today. Obviously, my career is not over. I got a lot more to do. But taking the short time period that I have been able to take away from University of Waterloo and looking back on how my time as a student at Waterloo has impacted, and continue, even my relationships with Waterloo as an alumni have impacted my career. There's kind of three major things. And these are obviously separate from the fact that, University of Waterloo Engineering and the nanotechnology program, they are going to push you to your intellectual limit. You're going to get a great engineering education. There is no other school, in my opinion, that will give you a better education in engineering than Waterloo. But if you think about, okay, what's on top of that, these are the three things that stand out to me. So number one, University of Waterloo, with things like the Velocity program, as well as all sorts of other different programming that they have inside the university, as well as the fact that it is in Kitchener-Waterloo itself, is just truly a unique place for building startups. On the right is an infographic pulled from the Velocity Incubator in 2019 about the $1 billion in funding that just the companies that have been sent through the Velocity program have been able to raise in the last, since the inception of the program. And this is just, grown even higher in the last year or two since the posting of this infographic. Secondly, Waterloo puts you right at the heart of Canada's technology industry. So, whether you end up getting deep into research in nanotechnology, or start to think about, how can you apply nanotechnology in more of the private industry and consumer space, there are a bunch of different opportunities just within Kitchener-Waterloo and Toronto. And honestly, wherever you look across the globe, you are, by default, as a Waterloo alumni, into this amazingly deep network that exists everywhere. Any tech hub that I've gone to, whether it was at my time at Community Tech or even at my time at North Ophthalmic, it just constantly surprises me of how many University of Waterloo engineers and University of Waterloo graduates generally exist in all of these, high growth companies, as well as, in these amazingly interesting research projects in academic institutions as well. They're literally everywhere. And lastly, co-op is your chance to really iterate on your career, and being someone who works in technology, iteration is the name of the game. The more you repeat, the more you learn, the better your products and the better your experiences will be for your customers. I think honestly the same lesson goes for your career. The more that you iterate on your career, both like who you work for, but also what role you work as for whoever you're working with, or whether that means working for someone or working by yourself. Iterating through these options and really learning as much as you can through those different options is like totally invaluable when it comes to graduating university and kind of picking a path to start on. I learned so much, and it really basically changed my complete trajectory from spending 5 years in research at university to building a business that failed and then joining a business that ended up being bought by Google. So it is highly consequential, just outside of the fact that you get a great thing to put on your resume, as well as get paid to work at many of these places while you're going to school. So yeah, that's my main key takeaways on how Waterloo has impacted my career, and hopefully that's helpful in making your decisions moving forward.